Live and in
Oh yeah, we are.
color.
Okay.
Talkie.
Let me get into the spreadsheet here. All right. Ready?
Do it.
Hello and welcome to Wi-Fi Optional. This is the weekly tech show where we talk tech so you don't have to. This is episode 19, recorded Monday, March 28th, 2016. My name is Rikshan Wijaratna, and along with me, as always, through the interwebs is Mr. Jason Watercott. Hi, Jason.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. And I got some new tablets that I've actually been playing with, and also a new VPN tunnel, and got a new step pedometer or sports measuring device, if you want to call it. So I got a bunch of new toys that I'm playing with.
Does that mean you're actually going to start working out, or is that play around with?
Of course, I'm gonna work out. I mean, why?
It's always the
uh,
best goal.
yep, exactly. It's the year's still early, so I can still start, right? Lots of great things happening this week in the arena of technology. Apple's made some waves, and there's some cool gadgets that we're going to talk about. Uh,
Yep, and Google, or excuse me, Microsoft's new bot apparently is going to take chatbot, hopefully take on Google's Go bot pretty soon here in a battle to the death.
I don't know about that though, because they had to. I mean, it did its job, I think, but they had to take it down. Microsoft terminates its Tay, is what they call it, AI chatbot, after she turns into a Nazi. It was actually pretty funny. I was watching the tweets. The story says Microsoft was forced to dunk Tay, its millennial mimicking chatbot, into a vat of molten steel. The company has determined her after the bot started tweeting abuse at people and went full neo-Nazi, declaring that Hitler was right. I hate the Jews, quote unquote. Some of this appears to be innocent, insofar as Tay is not generating these responses. Rather, if you tell her repeat after me, she will parrot back whatever you say, allowing you to put words in her mouth. However, some of the responses were organic. Long story short, Microsoft released this artificial intelligence engine onto Twitter and said, "Hey, this is a learning, growing, living thing. Talk to it, see what it responds, and then I personally think the program worked exactly like it was designed. It started learning, and people took advantage of it and turned it into what you'd expect it to be."
Exactly, and that's the way I heard it when I heard the first of the story. Is it reminds me of when you have an older, or excuse me, an older sibling teaching a younger sibling, swear words. They say it over and over enough. They won't say it at first, but eventually, they'll run around the house, screaming it at the top of their lungs. So, which just kind of happened in this case, where it wasn't like someone just told to do something right off the bat. It just conditionally they keep saying it over and over again. It's finally going to pick up on it and start using the same vulgarity or whatever slurs it would they wanted it to say at the time. But like you said, it's very interesting that it did work, pretty much as they wanted it to, where it learned and kind of became what the teachers were teaching. And in this case, when you have 14-year-olds uh, on the web teaching it, that this is kind of what happens.
And that's the thing. Maybe this is exactly what they needed, in my opinion, at least. Now they can take this and they can put a framework around it and say, hey, you know what? We learned all these things. What's going to happen, and then how it responded, and kind of do a an analysis of it and say, all right, we can release version 2, and then we know what not to do. The artificial intelligence is great, but we still seem to be missing that key component, and this is something that's going to be very difficult to implement. That little flag that says yes, this is right, or no, this is wrong. There's that instinctive feeling. That's going to be very difficult to emulate using artificial intelligence. I'm sure you can write all these algorithms that say here's good, here's right. There's the ones and zeros, the binary logic, but then when he comes into the fuzzy logic area where, well, you don't know what's going to happen, it's going to be very tough to replicate and mimic.
Well, it almost boils down to empathy, and that's probably one of the toughest things to teach a computer to realize when it comes to human thinking. So, be interesting to see how it the second iteration turns out. But moving on to the second story, going back to the actual parts that make something like an AI chatbot possible. Intel officially puts the tick and tock CPU cycle on hiatus. Intel is saying goodbye to its traditional tick-tock production cycle and turning to a new three-step process for the foreseeable future. Instead of moving into manufacturing process technology, manufacturing process technology roughly every 2 years, with new CPU architecture on the same processing interval. I can't even talk today. Intervening years, Intel will stretch out the timeline and add a third leg called optimization. Basically, long story short in this is they've always, like we talked before the show, is they always have a development and then a um, what's the word for it? I completely went blank on my um,
Kind of an R&D
R
stage and then production stage.
production stage. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. Now they're kind of going to, instead of trying to keep up with the ever shrinking technology, um, decide to optimize it instead of continually making the silicon transistor size smaller and smaller.
Well, this the other part that they mentioned was that they didn't say that they're doing this because computer sales are dropping. Computer sales are doing really well, but I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunate, but this semiconductor technology is starting to plateau. They've kind of reached a threshold, and now they got to figure out how they're going to go to the next level. They've come down drastically from a 45 nanometer chip to all the way down to a 14 nanometer chip, and then we talked about this before the show. There's companies that actually claim that they have a 10 nanometer chip as well. The funny part is the article says as soon as you go below a 10 nanometer chip to like the 8 and the 9, there's all these quantum mechanic effects that start happening, and then they have very weird unexplained output characteristics that come out of this chipset. So they can go smaller, but they just don't know how to control the inputs and outputs. So there's some work to be done, but that's great to know that they can keep shrinking it down. So hopefully that this is not gonna hinder, but I have a sneaky suspicion that even though they go to this 3 year cycle, they may have iterations that pop up in between that have slight variations. Oh, you have a 64-bit version 2 or whatever it is, or different bridges that they built in, or different interfaces that they come in. So I have a feeling that they're still going to have chips that are coming in between, but the core cycle is going to go from 2 years to 3 years.
And I think we've seen this in the past too. The optimization usually always equals power consumption, and that's kind of what they've done in the past iterations. Is really, make them smaller, make them faster, and then make them less power hungry. So I think exactly like you said, is you're going to see little breaks and little things that are more incremental than just a TikTok and optimization series. It might be just a little twerk here and there, and that'll be what they'll rename it. But like you said, I believe them when they say it's not because computer sales, because it, Moore's law is not in effect anymore, and this is just a byproduct of it, that they're just running out of size, and getting that small, you're going to have weird quirks and issues.
Right, exactly. And then the next thing, which actually I am kind of stoked to maybe get my hands on one. I know you are too. The other side of the coin is, these chips are powered through the internet. Well, Synology is a company that is known for making NASs, or network attached storage devices. They've actually come out with a pretty sweet router. Best known for its network attached storage devices, Taiwanese company Synology has turned its hand into a different set of networking with the RT1900 AC router. There's a USB 3.0 port on the side, along with something a little different, an SD card slot. The RT1900 certainly ticks all the standard boxes for a router, offers 802.11 BGN and AC, 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz dual simultaneous bands, 3 by 3 MIMO streams, and a supported data rate of 1.9 gigabits when everything is running perfectly. The really fun part about this is it comes with a very open operating system. Yes, it is a very open operating system and a firmware structure. So you go into the management interface and you can drag and drop, or basically it's a modular level of what types of software you want this router, and you can encapsulate with, and you can customize this router the way you want to run it at home or in your small business or business for that matter.
And the show the way this tech article out there, but it's one of those things that kind of pique both our interests. And we both have dealt with
Yeah, we may have lost Jason again, so we'll come back to that one. We'll see what Jason has to say. But some of the other features on this, the RT1900, if for example, if you have it in the bedroom, you can not only turn off the front LEDs if they're keeping you awake at night, you can schedule when the lights are on, turn them off between midnight and 8 a.m. for a good night's sleep. Have them easily visible at any other time. Primary interface, of course, is the web, but they're also coming up with an iOS and an Android app. The other really cool part is there's a lot of really neat features that are built in. For example, the parental controls. If you it almost has an embedded feature where it looks at what you blocked or what you used for parental controls, and then kind of works around that. So, for example, if you block Facebook, it'll also block Facebook traffic via app or any mobile device that's on the network. So there are some smarts that are built into the to the device. It looks like, which is actually cool. Pricing wise, I think at this point in time it runs about $180. Jason, correct me if I'm wrong. Sub $200, I think, is the price of the router right now.
yeah, I think
Um,
it was come MSRP was like 199, but they always come out underneath MSRP.
yeah, welcome back. But yeah, it's actually kind of cool. I'm interested to see how well this works. There's good reviews. We had some of the other tech podcasters actually try it out. They said it works pretty good. I'm kind of stoked that you can actually put an SD card and USB 3.0 shared hub on it. Yeah, USB hub on it. So that'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, and we talked about for the show too. I don't know if you mentioned this when I dropped there for a second, but we had things like the Eero, and we were looking up a TP-Link multi-WAN router before the show. It's just interesting to see um, something that's kind of been forgotten for a while in home and small business. Routers like this start to become more and more prevalent, not just cookie cutter things from Belkin and Netgear and things like that. So, should be interesting to see what this brings for the future. Last article we have is privacy.com coming out with a new idea to keep online shoppers safe. New company dubbed privacy.com thinks it has a solution to the problem of online security. Instead of handing out your actual debit card and credit card numbers, privacy.com lets you create a virtual debit card that you are locked for use with a single vendor, or burner cards that are only valid for a one-time use, similar to pay-as-you-go debit cards you can get from various places. If one of your cards, if no one has your actual card, uh, the thinking goes that your credentials are safe. The next major database breach, uh, for that matter, is not going to affect you. The basic idea has already gained interest in investors. The company announced in October that it has raised 1.2 million from investors, including Jim Messina, former White House deputy chief of staff, and the company's founders, including Andy Roth, the former chief privacy officer for American Express. Privacy.com is free to use and makes its money on taking a cut from the interchange fees that merchants pay to Visa and other banks. So this is really interesting. We have things like Apple Pay and things like that to try to kind of pull you away from having an actual physical card and getting away from these data breaches like this. And now this is completely gone the opposite way of not even having that account. It's just kind of a thing in the cloud, almost all of Bitcoin, where it's just kind of a currency floating around out there, or something that's tied to it that's not the actual, um, tangible.
I really love this idea. I want to say it was Chase that it was either Chase or U.S. Bank, one of the two, actually has this as one of the products in their Visa portfolio. You can actually buy in their model a virtual Visa card, or you can buy a pack of 10 or whatever the case may be, and then when you're buying something online, you go in and you say, okay, my total is, $75.10. Then you log into US Bank, pull one of those cards, those virtual cards that you had purchased, put the dollar amount, and then get the number in, and it's a one-time number burner. You're done. Um, I think what didn't catch on with that model was the fact that you had to buy these cards. You had to pre-buy a pack of 5 or 10 or whatever, and then have it sitting there. In this case, Privacy.com has deals with all these merchants and say, hey, you know what, we're going to do this. Customers are going to be more apt to use it because it's a burner card. It's a lot safer. However, give us a little bit of a cut. I did go to privacy.com and I created an account in there. It's free by the way to create an account. The one thing I did notice is right now, and they claim that they're always adding new banks. Right now, the only banks that participate with this particular feature with privacy.com are some of the big banks. So if you don't have an account with them, unfortunately, you can't participate. It's I think it's a fantastic idea. Maybe not for things like Amazon where you actually have your payment information stored. I'm not too worried about something like that, but I might be on eBay, or maybe eBay might not even be the right thing. But if I'm on some website and I want to just buy something that I know I'm probably never going to buy from them, or I'm probably not going to go back to that website, this is a fantastic option. And hopefully, pretty soon, they're going to start striking deals with other banks too, and I think this might actually catch on.
Yeah, it's we both came from the retail world where we know we had certain people that were, I wouldn't say tin hat wearers, but they didn't have a bank, and they banked by only using prepaid Visa or Mastercards, and that's a great solution. But like you said, with the other solution that they currently had, because it was Chase or who it was that had it, is you always had to pay a fee for having these, and that was always the catch 22. Is do I want to have $1,000 and $100 separate gift cards, but I'm paying $5 each time, so that $1,000 just cost me $50 to have that convenience, and that
Right.
was always kind of the catch 22, where if they're doing it like this, the end user's really not seeing it, but it kind of opens a whole other door of, people don't realize that the credit card purchase isn't just Visa or Mastercard are taking their 2.5%. There's a lot of hands that pull off, 0.5% even, of
Right.
fees and things in credit card transactions, and this would just be one more little percentage added in there. So in the end, it's not affecting the end user, but it's still less money that retailer is getting, and in the long run, just less money kind of going to the right direction in which it was meant to be spent. So it'd be interesting if this catches on, because I really like the idea. We've been talking lately about 3D printers, and the one website I found for buying them is seems legit, but it's one of those things where I wouldn't want to completely risk putting my bank account on. I
You
definitely
mean
use
you're
my
not
credit
gonna go
card.
back? You mean you're not gonna
Yeah,
go back and buy a second 3D printer?
here's my checking account number to somebody in China. But this would be a prime example where it's 300 some dollars to three. I put $350 once, pay it, and poof, they have access to the extra $12 or something that's left over. So it's really not a big deal if they were to get that. So
Another thing that I think might be really cool is if they can somehow integrate with like Apple Pay and Android Pay. If they can somehow figure out, oh hey, okay, you have Apple Pay, you have Android Pay, great. You have a funding source, you have a permanent Visa card that's tied to it. We're going to use that Visa card and we're going to proxy off of that. And then every time you pay, instead of having to go through all these encryption stuff, we're going to give you a burner card number, and it's going to use that. I mean, it might not be that exact model, but it might be something worthwhile. So if you wanted to, and you tap your phone and it says, oh, do you want to use your normal card, or do you want to use privacy.com? So if you're at some kind of at a store that you normally don't shop at, and you don't want to, or you're skeptical, or you're traveling, you're on vacation, and you're at a store, then you want to buy a boogie board, and it's just going to be a one-time purchase. This might be an option. Certainly, something very, very cool and very interesting. I'm going to keep watching this and see if hopefully this will go somewhere.
Yeah, and the last note I have is the one thing when we were talking about this originally that came to mind I forgot to bring up was the other downside of the probably why they haven't done this in the future is credit card numbers aren't a infinite um, resource. You know what I mean? Eventually they're going to
Good
have to
point. Very
go
good point.
to 32 digits or something, use hex or something like that in order, if you start having these burner accounts. Or I don't know if there's some way to have a shelving period where they're rehashed every 8 years or something like that, where if they sit long enough they can be reused or something like
Kind
that.
of like a
That's
phone number.
yes, exactly. So there has to be a way to reproduce these. Otherwise, if you use one for every transaction, you do 100 transactions a month, and that's one person of 3.5 billion people. It's a lot of single time use credit cards.
And the other thing that I'm not a huge fan of right now, if you do have an account and through privacy.com and you happen to be part of one of the major banks that they support, right now the only way to control it is through a browser extension. It'd be really nice if they actually have a core website with security where you log in and you control them as opposed to a browser extension. As safe as it might be, it probably not the most user friendly way. It just doesn't give you that warm and fuzzy feeling when you're a user. Oh, I have to control my virtual credit cards through a browser extension.
It's kind of like
I
buying
don't
them
know.
from a guy with a long suit on the side of the black alley somewhere or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's all right. It's safe. Don't worry. Yeah. So, but the big elephant in the room. So FBI is no longer feuding with Apple on. Well, they're still feuding with Apple, but when it comes to trying to break into or get in, break the encryption and get into the iPhone in question that was part of Farouk Saeed's phone. Ah, gosh, I can't even talk today. Um, Apple claims that they've actually gotten into the phone and they've pulled the data and they're analyzing it. So that particular lawsuit was dismissed as of this morning. It was funny because we had a lot of articles written on this as of last week. Oh, this company, this is what's going to happen. And then this afternoon, they said, "Oh, everything is done. We got into the phone. We no longer need your help." So there's a lot of people saying a lot of things, and I've been following the Twitter feed on it and on what other people are saying, but it certainly changes the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit last week, and I'm starting to kind of pull away from that point of view of maybe this was just uh, their way to back off and realize that they're pushed to um, use this situation as a way to push legislation through or set a precedent. I think that maybe they were just trying to find a solution, but it begs the other point of why didn't they think of this first before they threw their hands in the air and decided to make the internet get all mad at them for um, trying to push their way onto something that they really didn't have any grounds on. And getting back to what you said about the articles this week, we both after our last show the day later we were joking about how the company which was helping Apple in this was Celebrate, and coming from the mobile world we both used
We know
Celebrate.
Celebrate pretty well,
Yes, Celebrate transfer machines for
which
phone
actually
information.
though it made sense because we talked about that on the show about NAND mirroring and how that probably is the most viable way. And guess what? That's what Cellbrite does. They do NAND mirroring to copy phone information.
Exactly, and that's why they're so good at it. Is they're able to think beyond just using standard protocols that come on phones, and that's why we were sometimes able to transfer things off of phones that probably should not have been able to be transferred off of, and dead phones and broken phones and things like that. So it's just funny how things like that come full circle, and um, it just goes to show somebody that, I personally before this just thought Cellbrite as being this phone transfer company, but they have a lot of irons in the fire when it comes to security and general things like that. And apparently, we talked about before the show, this led to some contracts that they were able to force the hand of the government into, so that they could help them with the situation.
Now, I have to say that it's nothing is official. Nobody's actually come out and said yes, Cellbrite is the company. Cellbrite won't say anything. Apple, not Apple. The FBI won't say who it is. But it's awfully coincidental that the day after Cellbrite signed this pretty big contract with the government, they said we need a week, or we need an extension on this, and then ta-da! All of a sudden they're in the phone, and they're pulling data. I was watching the Twitter feed, and I was reading up. I follow Edward Snowden on Twitter. Just to kind of get both sides of the spectrum, and he actually has a good point. And it says it took over a month. It took just over a month after FBI testified under oath that they couldn't access a locked iPhone. And then he claims, remember when government officials used to lose their jobs for false testimony? That to me, that was kind of interesting. So at one point, the FBI said, "Yep, we have to sue Apple. They have to open it because nobody else can get into it. Apple is the only company that can do it." And then all of a sudden, it's like, "Yeah, sorry, we don't need you anymore." So that was kind of interesting. So that kind of, does that mean that the government they didn't look hard enough, or does that mean that their their level of technical knowledge, as good as it may be, was probably not exactly up to par, that they didn't really know what they were talking about, or I shouldn't say they didn't know what they were talking about. They didn't really know what they need to look for in order to break this. And then all of a sudden, they start going, okay, Apple's not cooperating, we need to go to a third party. And then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, you can do all these things. Oh, I think we figured it out. Apple, we don't need you. We got a third party. Is that what that means? I don't know.
Well, I've heard 2 points in this. I've heard multiple stories that the FBI is light years behind where the NSA is, and as much crap as we give the NSA about spying on us and doing these things, they did this on their own accord. You know what I mean? They learned this stuff. They figured out how to do this stuff. Where the FBI seems to be going about the backwards way of let's not get creative. Let's just sue people into making things work right. And going back to the Snowden idea, they uh, he's the one that blew the whistle on the NSA and all the stuff they do, and yet he's still kind of saying, um, you know, they should have done their due diligence and dug into this kind of thing. And the picture I get in my head for his point is a door that can only be pulled open, but there's no label of that. And all the FBI did was push, 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 push. And all along, all they
And
had
it
to do
just
was
didn't
pull.
work.
Yeah. And it didn't work. So they're going to sue the door manufacturer instead of actually just trying to pull it for once, and
Right.
that's kind of, I think what he was kind of hinting at is, like, do you really just start suing when you're not creative and make other people solve your problems for you? And I think that says a lot when um, he's kind of almost standing up for the part that he's been fighting for years and years and years.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And about the departments of government, and it's a very tough battle to fight. When it comes to encryption and hacking and trying to keep up with these technologies, it's a huge cat and mouse game. And you have this government organization that you entrust, and they say, yep, the NSA is where it's at. They're going to be the smartest group, but then you also have to keep them up to snuff. You also have to, they have to stay up to speed with everything that's happening too. And then when you have an organization that maybe has certain funding restrictions, compared to, take Apple for example, they have deep pockets. They can do whatever the heck they want, and you compare it to a government organization that can't really, they don't have pockets like that. Everything is budget controlled, and then they're like, well, yes, we'd like to do it, but we can't. Sometimes money talks.
And that's just the way it is with I don't know. Nowadays, it just seems this is kind of epitome of how I feel about technology. We kind of talked about this a little bit before the show in a very different sense, but there's what I talked about with family. I seem to get into fight with people about technology things, and people think they're experts when they're it kind of goes back to when I first started with the internet and technology and people that actually knew what was going on and kind of script kiddies. And in this case, the FBI is kind of the script kiddies in it, where they act like they know what's going on and they need to do this stuff, but they really don't know how it works or what they need to do. And they're willing to, sue other people to do it instead of actually learning what's going on themselves. And that kind of, I guess, that frustrates me on an ethical and moral level more than it does on a government trying to creep in and force a company to do something they don't.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, as a government entity, you have to um, you have to portray this. I have control. I know what's going on. I can. I'm in control mentality and attitude. Uh, Basically, I mean, you can give you're basically in charge of all these people, or the security of all these people, and you have to be in that kind of authoritative position. And then for them to all of a sudden say, well, we don't really, we're light years behind, what the guys in Cupertino are doing, it might not be the best, outlook. But I think, um, it might be in the interest of both parties to say, hey, you know what, Apple, let's shake hands, let's figure out, we got this, how can you do it, and vice versa, instead of, like you said, all of a sudden, nope, lawsuit. I mean, there's a saying, there's a reason we have more lawyers in this country than doctors.
Exactly. And I hope it doesn't, you know, kind of like you alluded to. I hope it doesn't leave a sour taste in Apple's mouth, and I hope it doesn't leave a boy who cried wolf precedent with the government, because that's just not going to bode well in the future if something needs to happen.
Right, and then the other part that I'm kind of concerned about is, what is this going to do? Where is this going to take technology, or how is this going to shape technology? So Apple already knows. All right, fine. So you did this, okay. So does that is this the cue for Apple to say, all right, now we definitely have to make something that nobody else can crack. You lose the key, you're done. You can't get in, and they can kind of, like we said, a couple of weeks back, and then kind of put their hands up and say, "Yep, sorry, can't do anything." And if they do that, what does that do to, sure, in a situation like this, that kind of, washes their hands and say, sorry, we can't do anything, but we got to this point because of, reasons A, B, and C. This is why we're here. But at the same time, yes, that might take care of this legal argument. But as a consumer, how is that going to change, our usage habits of how we're going to use technology? I want to be able to get into my device if I forget it, if I forget my password. That'd be fantastic. But if you say, oh, you forgot your password, you can't do it, well, so all my pictures are gone now, all my information is gone, and we've gotten to a point where we rely on these so much. It's interesting to see how all of these things, even though you don't realize it, are slowly starting to shape, technology, and help people make
Society in
technology.
general. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I think we've kind of
Not
dragged
too bad.
along. Not too bad, about 30 minutes or so. Yeah, that was a pretty good show. Thank you very much for listening, Jason. Thank you. Thank you to Purple Planet. They're the guys that provide our theme music. You can find them at purple-planet.com. Special thank you to everybody for listening or watching, and if you are, subscribe if you like the show. Find us on Twitter. We are at Wi-Fi Optional, and if you want to watch the show live, watch our Twitter feed, and then we'll post a hashtag, reply to the hashtag, and then we can send you an invite so you can watch the show live. And if you want to chat with us live, ask questions, go for it. That's what they're for. You can find us on iTunes, and you can also find the audio-only version, if you wanted to, on our website, wifioptional.com. Jason and I, we are in the process of moving our audio host, so hopefully we'll have a new and improved. I never really got that phrase, new and improved. If it's new, how can it be improved? If it's improved, how can it be new? We're going to be having hopefully a new host within the next few days. But yes, wifioptional.com. And if you ever wanted to email us, info@wifioptional.com. Find us there. And from myself and Jason, thank you for listening and have a fantastic week. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.